Hi everyone, Sandra Duran Wilson, and thanks for joining me for this Mixed Media Soul Sparks. And in this episode, I'm going to share with you poured collage pieces. And I did similar part, and this was the second book of Surface Treatment Workshop. Still one of their best sellers internationally. And the piece that I created was this one, using both pour in the background and poured collage elements, which I show you how to make here. But I'm going to show you on a live screen today, because sometimes a picture just doesn't quite do it. And I just want to share that this was the first one I started working with to prepare for this video. And I made all of the mistakes so that you don't have to. So let me give you my tips for doing this. But first, basically what it is I am taking a pouring medium and I'm going to pour it into a plastic surface. I'm using some lids. These are colored, but if you have a clear one, something that is going to actually hold the pouring medium. Here's a square one that I've used. Then I'm going to pour that in and I'm going to add paints and different things to it. So let's just start with this one. Now I'm going to use the Liquitex pouring medium, but I also tried it with just a gloss medium and the Deco Art pouring medium. They all work just as well. The main thing that I learned is not to make it too thick. So what I'm going to do is just pour it in the center here, and you basically just want enough to cover the base. And I'll show you what happens if you pour it too thick and if you add too much paint. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. Acrylic shrinks 30% when it dries. So you want to make sure you have enough to cover it, because when it shrinks, if it's not quite enough, you're going to get a crack in the middle. But don't worry, you can fix that. So I'm just going to move this around. There we go. Now I've got some little glitter pieces here. This is called Earth Elements, made for textures and crafts. Just go to your craft store and see what they have laying around. And I'm just going to put a few pieces, not many, because what I learned was too much is not a good thing, especially paint. And I'm going to use, let's just go with my favorite, quinacridone gold. This is a high flow paint. You can use any type of a liquid paint. A heavy body paint won't work, so you need some kind of a fluid. Ink will work. Even alcohol inks work, but they do fade out. I like the high flow, but a soft body paint will also work. So this is what I did learn. Rather than dropping it directly into there, I'm going to put the paint onto my palette, and then I'm going to use a skewer and put the paint in, because you can see how it flows out. It just really moves. And if I put a drop in, it would have been too much. And I have all of that paint left. Just a tiny, tiny amount is what I needed. I'm going to take the other end of the skewer, the pointy end, where I can draw better with it. And it's almost like a marbling effect that I'm going for. The main thing is You need to keep this flat, and it's going to take it a while to dry, especially if you have a large surface. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside. And I'm going to show you some different things that I did. I have to clean that up, otherwise I know I'd end up in it. So here's the first one, and I learned a lot from it. Now this is, let me get it out of here. This is how it was when I poured it. So I put a lot of white paint in, added a lot more paint, too much paint, so you can't really see anything here. And on this side, all the white paint ended up on the back side. This is how you know when you have way too much paint, because the paint all stuck to this. This isn't the best plastic. I mean, it pulled out, but that other plastic is a more shiny plastic. With that said, though, I do like some of the effects that happened here. And I'll probably end up using this piece. Some of the metallic pieces I just put in, you can still see them peeking through. Much more opaque using the white paints. Very different effect. If you want that effect, then yes, use a little more paint and use white. But if you want a more clear effect, like this one, I'll just put a piece of white paper here so you can see. When the pouring medium dries, it's going to be clear. So if I put this on top of a piece, I'm going to be able to see the background colors. Now I just noticed in this lid, I can see the writing from the manufacturer of whoever this, Betty Crocker. So maybe you might want to find a lid that doesn't have writing on it. But I like the effect of both having something opaque and having something clear. This is similar to what I just made using just a couple of colors and putting the paint on the palette and then dipping it in with the knife. Now here is another one that was poured this way. So when it was dry, this one was so thick you can see that it came out the edge here. So it took me a while to get this out. Here's another trick. When you're doing this and you start to peel the edge, like it broke a little there, but I had to peel this up and let it dry a little more because it was still sticky in there and you see that copper paint. So all of the glitter went to the bottom. Too much paint, too thick, too much going on. But it's still an interesting piece. And I think it'll work very nicely with this pour that I did on this surface. Okay, now I use the outer ring to make another element. And here it's like the purple and the glitter kind of all clumped together. So I like this other side better. I'd probably cut it and use just elements of it somewhere, not the whole thing. But you can see in here where some of the glitter stuck in there. Too much, little goes a long way. And here's another one that, oops, you can see how the paint's still stuck there. A lot of paint, not as clear, but not as opaque. With this particular shape, what I would do is I would take my scissors and I would cut out shapes from this. I don't particularly like the shape as it is. But what I'm looking at here, you see how thin it is there and how thick it is over here? So obviously this had a bit of a tilt to it, or I didn't have it sitting in a flat surface. Those are some other things that you'll find. Here was my other initial pour with way too much paint and very dark on this side. All the white went to the other side. But it can still be an interesting collage element. This one is a bit more transparent along with this one. This one I did little drops And here is the last one, and I wanted to show you, I haven't peeled this one out yet, so you have to start at the edge. Here, let me get this other glove. I'm a lefty, so I gotta use this other hand. And just get it going. You see why I peeled most of them off before. It's a little tricky, but I just want you to be aware of that. Didn't do anything wrong if you're having a hard time. And this one has been drying for about 5 days. So, I'm not sure why it's not coming out. There we go. I'll get my little skewer. It's still looking kind of milky, like white, and that means that it's not quite dry. There we go. Now I can tell that this is still, it's white, so it's not completely dry. Even though I can peel it out, if I let this dry longer, this will become much clearer. So you see all the possibilities of what you can do with these acrylic skin pours. And then you can just make sure you wrap them in between plastic page protectors, or maybe even just wrap them individually in some plastic wrap. Otherwise, they will stick to each other. You'll never get them apart. And I have like a little box where I keep all of these things. And so when I need an element like that, I can go and grab it and cut it to shape for whatever I'm working on. Here's another one that the colors seem to work well with what's going on with this one. So I will finish this one and show you what it looks like. I just want to share with you one other unusual acrylic pour. Oh, actually 2 other things. Now this is little containers that I use in my workshops that have, this one had fluid matte medium in it. And over time it dried up. So I cut the container, and now this is not going to get any more clear because it's got matte medium. But what I like about this is it's dimensional, and then I can paint on this, and then that can also get collaged into another piece. So nothing goes to waste. Speaking of which, this final piece was actually the bottom of my paint bucket. And I keep a bucket where I dump my paint water, you know, all of the stuff that's like this when I'm cleaning my brushes, and I just dump it into the bucket, and eventually the water evaporates, and this was at the bottom. Now I did add that little bit of copper paint, and I've got some other things going on here, and I'm putting it onto a paper backing and stitching it together, and then I'm going to glue it onto here. So like I said, nothing goes to waste. If you're doing a lot of paint pouring, you probably have a lot of paint that's going, you know, into a bucket, and this is a great thing to use. It's just really interesting, very organic looking, lots of shapes in it that I find interesting. So find some other ways of how can you make these poured collage elements, whether it's a very long-term process like this or something pouring with a pouring medium and paint, and you can even sprinkle in some other things. So make sure you post on the Creative Awakening site what you're working on and share your creations with the rest of us. And thanks for joining us. Join the Creative Awakening community on Facebook, where you'll be able to post your art, connect with other creatives around the world, and ask questions. Use the hashtag Mixed Media Soul Sparks when posting your work on social media. Thanks for joining me